Hi gang, Rob here. It is the evening of April 2017. Coming to you tonight with a knife review of a knife that I'm kind of surprised to have. This is the number 13 Congress pattern, and the specific knife we have is the Half Congress Clerk office knife in Titioute trim. Comes, of course, in a Great Eastern Cutlery Titioute tube with, in this case, a rather handsome number 13 pattern button. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Why am I surprised to have this knife? Well, I'll tell you. Frankly, I'm not much of a fan of the Congress pattern. Here's sort of an explanation of that. Here's an old Boker Tree brand Congress. It's got the sort of bent hot dog shield. It's got Delrin jigged covers, nasty nickel silver bolsters, and it's a carbon steel knife. It's got black spots, and it's got 2 sheep's foot and 2 spears, and it's all symmetrical. And somebody wandered into my office one day and needed $20. Had this knife to sell. That's sort of how I value Congress knives, and don't condemn me. I've always just seen Congress knives as kind of unimaginative. They're the knife that the old guy would buy back in the day, who really wasn't a knife guy. He just needed to have a knife in his pocket because life requires knives. That's why they're the oldest tool known to man. So he'd buy these Congress knives with 4 blades in them at the dime store, and the reason he bought the Congress is because it wasn't much cheaper than much more expensive than a 2-bladed jack, but it had 4 knives, so you could break 3 of them and still have one, left over, and it'd be a longer time before you'd have to go buy another one. So, I just never had much respect for the Congress pattern, and that's wrong. It's wrong, okay? And that opinion started to change when I ran into this knife. And those of you who have been longtime subscribers recognize this knife. This is the Queen City Classics Cutlery Big Congress in laminated veneer sheet abalone. This, I believe is the finest queen knife ever made. And it will not surprise you after I said that. This is one of the last knives Queen produced in their flagship series before one Bill Howard left back in the early 2000s. And Bill Howard, of course, left Queen to found Great Eastern Cutlery. This knife is a work of art. The Queen Big Congress, luxurious, amazing pulls, just silky smooth. Oh man, they're just awesome. Big, large Congress. The only thing I would have liked to have seen done different in the Queen Big Congress would be to sink these joints a little bit and not have so much tang sticking up. But they are what they are, and they are a masterpiece. So, but that's really, this knife was gifted to me by Steve. How about the truth? After one of his knife sales, and I was so glad to get it. But it didn't really flip me to a love for the Congress knife, and for a long time that old Boker and that Queen were the only ones I had. And then Great Eastern came out with the number 13 pattern. And again, not because I'm a lover of the Congress pattern, but because they made it in an American Whittler series for Roy Humenick, I had to buy one. because I have all the American Whittlers. And this was a sort of a collection completion knife. And, you know, I gave this knife sort of a lukewarm review, said it was well done, but it didn't excite me. And so the 13 passes by, right? And then, you know, I just happened to notice this. For some reason, this etch just kind of stole my heart. You know, the great thing about Great Eastern Cutlery, or one of the great things about them, is that they are a conservator of old patterns. They are resurrecting, reviving them. And this is a number 13 half Congress, so it has two blades running on one spring. And this sort of scrimshaw looking scroll work, which I believe is laser engraved on this knife. If somebody knows for sure, please let me know. You know, when I first saw it, I thought, that's interesting. Great Eastern would have a half Congress that they call a clerk, and then etch office knife into one of the covers. And this, by the way, is in smooth ivory bone, which is cow bone, ivory in color, okay? I just thought it looked cool, and it just sort of, every time I saw one, it just sort of pulled me in, just pulled me in. And one day it was pulling me in, I decided to do a little research. It turns out that this is not original. Half Congresses with office knife scrolled into the covers have been around for a long time. Found a lot of German I-brand versions of this pattern with varying blade styles. Now this one, and by the way, dimensions, about 3 11/16 enclosed length. Main blade, which is a Wharncliffe, is 2 15/16 inches long, and it's kind of a fooler. You would think, wouldn't you, that it's just skinny in every way, but we'll get to that. So we've got a main Wharncliffe, and then a nicely sunken little pen blade. It's not super tiny, usable with a hidden kick, so you can, you know, get up here and use it effectively without having that kick poke you, or in a draw cut grip with the thumb resting on the kick. Just two very usable blades. You know, what are you going to use a knife like this for? Well, you know, let's take it at face value. You're going to open a lot of mail with this knife, okay? You're going to open a lot of mail, and, you know, if it were 100 years ago, you might be dressing up the end on quill pens with this little blade. Now, in modern day, you might use the heck out of this main Warnie and then never touch the pen, just saving it for the time when you need a knife to be super sharp, okay? But the thing that fools me about that main blade is that it's not broad, you know, top to bottom, spine to edge, but my goodness, look at that stock width. You know, we got this big old spring. It's 1/8 of an inch back here at the base, and then there's a small steps down about 20 thousandths of an inch, so it's about 103 from the tang to where the swedge starts. And because it's not very tall or broad, it's kind of wedgy. I actually put a very aggressive edge bevel on this to make it kind of a racy slicer. It's like at 16 degrees per side with a little kiss at 19, just to dress up the apex, and it came out super sharp. But that's a robust little Wharncliffe. You know, you could rip through some pretty heavy packaging with that without having to worry about it. The one thing I really like about this knife is its complexity. Oh, you know what? I never told you. Here's how I came about this knife. I called GEC because I saw on Facebook one day that it was Chris Tucker's birthday. I could not let Miss Christine's birthday pass without a phone call wishing her a happy one. So I called her, and check to see what the dates are for the 2017 GEC Rendezvous. And they are the 10th, 11th, and 12th of August. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I said, hey, while I've got you on the phone, there's one I missed. She said, what's that? I said, the 13 Clerk with the ivory bone and office knife etched into the cover? She said, oh, I think we got a couple of those in the store. I said, really? She goes, well, you know what? Let me double check. They had just gotten back from the Oregon Knife Show. She said, I took a couple with me and they came back, but they're not here yet. Let me see if there's one in the store. Doggone it if there wasn't one in the store. So I got one. I got a pretty good price too. These are doing $150 on the secondary market. Who knew that there would be one in the GEC store for MSRP, which is a lot less. So that's how I got one. Pretty cool. So anyway, let's take a look. The thing that I like about it, as I said, is its complexity. So did you catch that when we looked at the spine? We have full thickness at the tang. Then it steps down from 125 to 103. Then we got a big old cut swedge down the right side of the blade. Why do we have that? And we just have a nice, long, graceful drawn swedge on the left. Well, because that is for clearance, okay? If you think about how wedgy this is, and I think this primary bevel is ground at like 12 degrees inclusive, okay? So like 6 degrees per side, which is pretty, that's pretty obtuse for a GEC knife. They're usually more gradual than that. So, I don't know, what does that drop down? About 100 thousandths? So think about how much thickness is reduced from here up to here, okay? And that is to allow that little pen blade to pass without rubbing. And there is no rub on either blade. And even on the pen blade, this is the outside edge, almost no swedge at all, just a very slight little break, and a bigger drawn swedge on the inside for clearance. Almost has a Zulu spear profile on that pen. The pen blade is really recessed into the handle. We've got a little notch to give us access to the nail neck. So when that warney's open, that pen blade is almost not even noticeable. And we would call that a near sunken or half sunken joint, okay? And notice how close to the frame the corner of that tang is compared to the big Congress from Queen, okay? Big difference. Not fully sunken, so you still can grab your skin on it. If they're fully sunken, you would call this an easy pocket or a pocket ease, because it doesn't catch the material of your pocket and rip it up. And then the tang on the warney, just a little more exposed even than the pen, but still pretty tight. Not bad. Check out the fitment of blades in Bladewell. Look how nicely they nestle. All that going on. No rubbing anywhere. I mentioned that big fat spring. The spring is wide because we want a single spring knife, but we got to have room for those blades to congress with one another. So we make a wide spring, which gives us pretty robust pull, at least on the second leg of the warney. It's probably a 5 and a 6. A little bit of progressive nature in that pull. Now the pen is a stout little spring because the lever is shorter. Of course, it's stock much thinner than the main, and we're going to take up that space with something called a catch bit. And you guys may remember me talking about catch bits in a TKA, Traditional Knives Anthology video. See, it's just a little sort of triangular shaped piece of brass. It angles down and touches the back spring. And then you can see that the back spring runs all the way along the length of that catch bit with the little notch makes it flush. And the only thing that holds that in place is the pivot rivet and the surface of the back spring against the bottom of the catch bit. And what it does is it serves as a second liner without extending out into the main blade well to take up space. So it just makes up the gap between the thickness of the pen blade stock and the thickness of the back spring. It does it very elegantly. In fact, if I move it sort of in between stops, you can see that that catch bit is no longer flush to the back spring. You can actually move it around a little bit with that spring raised up. I don't know if you can see that moving. Very ingenious. And when the knife is firmly at the stops, the catch bit is firmly in place. Does its job very well. Where have we seen that before on the channel? On whittlers that are not true split back whittlers. This is a good one to show. See that center wedge on the 13 American whittler that tapers and terminates? On a non-true split back whittler, these two springs would be exactly parallel. Then they would be cut away in thickness to allow for that catch bit, and then two slimmer sections would go catch the secondary blades. Easier to produce than this tapering split back frame. But the catch bit put to good use in the little half Congress Clerk. I just love the complexity. You know, a Congress pattern is sort of known for its symmetry, isn't it? You know, if you think about a knife like this, it's symmetrical, you know, left to right, end to end. Even the blades are exactly the same, end to end. Okay? And that's boring to me. So I like how everything's different, you know. There's one side of the blade, there's the other side of the blade. Nothing's the same. So I think it takes what is to me sort of a mundane, boring pattern and it makes it into something special when you do a half Congress like this. But, you know, sometimes I just make no sense. You know, wouldn't you think if I were going to buy a Clerk and I liked it because everything was different and it was complex, wouldn't you think I'd buy it in Northfield trim with fancy stuff, you know, with triple line bolsters and you know, some fancy blade finish? No, I bought this for a user. So I like the plain bolsters, the satin, no etch blade finish. You guys know that. This is a user knife. And this is where the Congress knife really shines. You know, a lot of times when you're carrying a medium-sized pocket knife like this, you're in this draw cut grip, this sort of vertical draw cut grip. And because it's slightly sway backed, it's beautiful in hand in that grip. There's plenty of room for the thumb to lie on top of the frame and catch that slight choil formed by the kick and get a lot of power pulling. Same with the pen. That warney is really out of the way. Plenty of room for my thumb. Even in an overhand pinch grip, it's still a really, really nice handle. And they finish these so well. See if I can come in close for you. Get a little focus. You know, nothing special going on, but perfect transitions. Super well finished spine. The hafting is perfect as we're used to seeing from GEC. Just nicely done. I make no sense. Why do I love this knife with its, you know, plain ivory, smooth bone covers and titty trim, but I thought this knife was kind of boring. I make no sense. And I think that's sort of one of the beauties of Great Eastern cutlery. You know, there is so much variety. You know, if you look through the literally hundreds of different, maybe thousands of different combinations in GEC's product line, if you can't find a knife that turns you on, there is something wrong with you. I was just really, really happy to get this knife. And I got it because for some reason I was thoughtful enough to call my friend Chris Tucker on her birthday and wish her a happy one. Sometimes it works like that. If you can find one of these, I suggest you buy it. If you like interesting traditional pocket knives with some real utility, the number 13 Clerk office knife is a good one, and it's a faithful nod to an old pattern. Thought you'd like to see it, guys. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the word is sharp.